Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Tuscan style ribs. That's right, I'm going to show you my take on Rosticciana. And forget about going low and slow. Right, these incredibly delicious grilled ribs are done hot and fast. And while an American barbecue pitmaster would say we're doing everything wrong here, if this is wrong, I do not want to be right, because these truly are amazing. And to get started, we'll put together a rub, which is going to start with some whole fennel seeds, which we will toss in a mortar and then pesto until they're coarsely ground and look something like this. At which point we'll toss in a nice big pinch of fresh rosemary, and we will bash those needles for a few seconds, just until they're bruised, and that fragrant oil has been activated, and it's mingled with that crushed fennel. And once that's happened, we will finish up with some kosher salt, some freshly ground black pepper, some chili flakes, as well as some garlic powder, and then we'll grab our freakishly small wooden spoon and we'll give it a mix. And once that's nicely combined, we will simply set it aside and we will move on to the cutting of the ribs. And I'm going to be using this rack of St. Louis style ribs, although baby back ribs will work. And what we'll do is flip that over and we'll take a knife and we'll feel between the bones so we know we're cutting through meat. And we will cut these up, slicing between each bone. And yes, you really should feel before each cut. Right here I didn't. And the knife hit a bone, and I had to start the cut over. But anyway, the point is, unlike almost every other rib preparation you've ever done, we are actually cutting the ribs apart before we season and cook. And then it probably doesn't make any difference, but I'm going to give that bone side a few slashes with the knife, just to cut through that membrane in a few spots. And if you see some extra pieces of fat, you can remove those too. And then what we'll do after pushing this nice and tight together is take about 1/3 of our almost dry rub, and we will sprinkle rub and press that into the bone side. And then once that's been accomplished, we can flip these ribs over. And again, we'll press those ribs nice and tightly together, so our rub is staying on the meat and not falling through to the cutting board. And we'll apply the rest over the top as evenly as we can. And once all the rest has been transferred on, and we press that firmly in, what we'll do is take half the ribs and stack them on top of the other half. And then I'm going to transfer those into a zip top bag. Although I guess if you want, you could just wrap these in plastic or parchment paper. But anyway, we'll wrap those and seal them up somehow. At which point I'm going to transfer them into the fridge for a minimum of 4 hours. But if you want to, you can go overnight, and they might be even better. So you'll have to decide how long. I mean, you are, after all, the Chef John of your Rosticciana. And then while those are in the fridge, at any point before we're ready to eat, we will make our vinaigrette, or in this case a citronette, which we will start by mashing up some sliced garlic and a pinch of salt in that same unwashed mortar. And we will smash that garlic up as fine as we want. And once that's been accomplished, we'll throw in a pinch of rosemary, as well as the juice of 1 lemon. And then however much lemon juice we got, we will add twice the amount of that of olive oil, or at least that's the classic ratio. And that's it. We'll go ahead and give that a stir, which we can just do with the pestle or a freakishly small wooden spoon. But if you want something more emulsified, you'd have to use a whisk, which I usually do before I serve it over the ribs. But this is a rustic recipe, and it really is fine like that if you want. And that's it. After my ribs were in the fridge for about 6 hours, I headed outside where the birds were chirping and the flowers were blooming, and my mesquite charcoal was a nice ashy white. And what we'll do is place those ribs down, starting with the bone side up. And once those have been placed down and evenly spaced, I'm going to cover this with the vents open, and we'll give that side about 4 minutes before we uncover it and flip them over. And as you can see, in just that short amount of time, we've already got some beautiful brown color. And once we have those all flipped over and repositioned exactly how we want, we will cover that up and give the other side about 4 minutes. And the great thing about this technique, besides the extremely gorgeous, delicious ribs, is that we don't have to wait like 2 to 3 hours to eat these. Right, these are usually going to be ready after about 20 to 30 minutes. And I did close those vents up a little bit, just to reduce that temperature inside a touch. And then what we'll do once that second side's gotten about 4 minutes is uncover it. And we'll try to flip these onto their sides And we'll let them grill for about 2 or 3 minutes that way. And then we'll uncover and repeat the process, flipping them over to the other side. And then once we've run out of sides, we can start the entire process over, flipping them back and forth to the bigger flat sides. And we'll continue doing that until our ribs are fully cooked. And no, I'm not going to make you watch every single move. And this is what mine look like after about 20 minutes of cooking time. And again, except for the flipping, we're cooking those covered. And of course, those smaller pieces are going to finish faster. So feel free to start pulling them off when they're done. And what we're shooting for, in the thickest part of the meat where it hits the bone, is somewhere between 180 and 185 internal temp, which is not going to give us meat that's fallen off the bone, but it's going to give us extremely delicious meat that we can fairly easily bite off the bone. And as far as that gorgeous appearance goes, it's hard to see here because of the way the light's hitting the meat. But when we take these inside, you'll be able to see they grill up to a beautiful rusty red. I mean, come on, look at those. And I know you want to grab that citronette and eat right now, but I think we should let them rest about 5 minutes at least before we transfer those onto some Tuscan marble, and we will drizzle those with our very garlicky, very lemony citronette. And then you know me, I always like to start with what I think will be the driest, worst piece. And if that one tastes and feels good, and it definitely did, then I know all the other even better pieces are going to be fantastic. Okay, so the worst piece test is completed, which means I can move on to one of the nice big fat ribs, and I'm going to spoon over more of that citronette. And while I don't use it, I think a little bit of fresh lemon is nice to serve with this, since these are very rich, and some folks might want to cut that with some fresh lemon juice. And even though that meat is not falling off the bone tender, and definitely retains a little bit of chewiness, after a little bit of gnawing, you should still end up with a clean bone. And by the way, when I say there's a little bit of chewiness, it is a very pleasurable chewiness and a very addictive chewiness. And I think the trade-off is more than well worth it when you consider the intensely delicious flavor. So we will wrap this up with a friendly reminder that low and slow is not the only way to go. And every once in a while, for a very memorable change of pace, it's fun to go fast and hot, which is why I really do hope you give these a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.